Hi, good evening. Welcome. My name is Maitreya Badami. I am an assistant professor in the Department of Political Science and Criminal Justice here at Chico State. And I also serve as the local coordinator for activities for United Policyholders. So we're really happy that you're all here tonight to talk with us. Whoa. And let me tell you a little bit about United Policyholders. So United Policyholders is a 501c3 nonprofit. It was founded about 27 years ago following the Berkeley Hills fires by attorneys who had previously practiced insurance law and wanted to be able to provide more assistance to consumers faster and reaching more people than one case at a time. So the nonprofit of United Policyholders, we are funded by foundations, by private donations, by contributions. We are not funded by the insurance industry, and therefore our assistance isn't for sale. We really are here both to support individual policyholders in the long-term recovery process after disaster, and also to advocate on behalf of consumers of insurance with state and federal legislatures. We want to thank our partners in tonight's event and in our ongoing Roadmap to Recovery program, which is multiple live in-person and also webinar presentations about all aspects of recovery after the Camp Fire. And Community Legal Information Clinic is one of the programs at Chico State. We provide free legal information to members of the public in 11 different program areas. A couple of our students are here to assist with the sign-in process. And we also want to thank St. John's, where we are, the Camp Fire Long-Term Recovery Group, and Butte County 211. And thank our speakers, Karen Ramus and Steve Price, who are survivors of prior wildfires, who are here to share their experience, unique as it is, to help you with your recovery. We also want to thank the following foundations: the Rural County, I can't remember what RCRC is, but it's an organization of rural county government agencies that includes Butte County. Butte Strong Fund, North Valley Community Foundation, Golden State, and EIF, who have all provided some financial assistance to the Roadmap to Recovery program. And special thanks to the Fired Up Sisters, who are survivors of the 2007 fire in San Diego, who, after their own recovery, created a nonprofit where they raise funds to provide assistance to people who suffer from disasters. And they've provided holiday cards here tonight, gift cards. This workshop is general guidance only, not legal advice. That's a disclaimer. We don't endorse or warrant any of the service providers that are on our website, but we do have an index of available service providers who support our work, and you can take a look if you're looking for any of those services. And our speakers are volunteering their time as community educators. We're not paying them for being here. We have some useful tools available to you. We have a few copies here, and I have more copies at Click, which is at 25 Main Street in Chico, of our yellow book, which is the Disaster Recovery Handbook that was put together from United Policyholder staff and also from the individual information collected by survivors of prior disasters who have provided all sorts of amazing things, including sample inventories for contents and things like that. It's a very, very useful book. We also have, to the right, we'll have these, they are organizers for you to keep a log of your contacts with your insurance company, as well as receipts and other documents that you collect over the course of this process. We have 24/7 help on our website, a very robust online library. There is a dedicated page at www.uphelp.org/campfire that has all things related to our particular fire, but there also are all kinds of other resources on that site, answers to very frequently asked questions relating to insurance law and the process of insurance recovery, and links to other really important, helpful services. Survivors Speak Tip Series. So this is survivors of prior wildfires and disasters who have put together a lot of useful links, and this is the website. This is the link to that on our page. So uphelp.org/survivorspeak. Recovering from a disaster is a marathon, not a sprint. I am sure that you know that better than anyone. We've just passed the 1-year mark. I think part of the reason for this particular event tonight is to just help provide some emotional support in recognition that this process is not just hard, it's not just difficult financially, but it is very difficult emotionally, and it's a trauma that keeps getting revisited every time you have to deal with some aspect of your recovery. So we want to provide some kind of emotional support as you're coming through the holidays. We have publications on the website as well. Again, at the Campfire specific page, there were some particular changes in insurance law that went into effect in September 2018 that do affect you. Including that there's a 36-month period now for collecting alternative living expenses. That previously was a 24-month period by law in California. So that additional time to collect whatever is your maximum on your policy is available to anybody who had a loss in the campfire. And then we also provide webinars. We have a staff person at United Policyholders who spent 20 plus years as a claims adjuster for a major insurance company, and she just has so much good, useful, practical information on how to manage this process. And she does these webinars where you can log in, you can send your questions in advance, you can send your questions in real time, and she will answer them. And the next one is on December 12th. So if you go to our website, to the Campfire page, there'll be a landing spot to register to take this webinar. You can also send questions in advance to mark@uphelp.org. We want you to be aware of the resources that we have here. 211 is a very useful resource that kind of has some kind of list going of everything that's available. We also printed out the on the Campfire Long-Term Recovery Group website, there's a link to all of the resources that have been collected as of about mid-November for spiritual and emotional wellness. It's an 8-page document. I have it over on the sign-in table, and you can take photos of any pages or all of the pages that seem applicable to something that you might need, a resource that you might want. So please help yourself to that particular document, and then these are some other websites that have useful information where resources can be found to help you. And then I'm going to introduce our speakers for tonight. Karen Remus, who was a survivor of the San Diego fire in 2003, and she's been a volunteer long-term for United Policyholders and has actually previously come here to speak on behalf of United Policyholders. Steve Price, a 2012 survivor in Colorado, who's also a volunteer in our Roadmap to Recovery program. So I'm not sure what order. Karen.
Thank you. And here we go. Well, good evening, everybody, and I'm very happy to be here with you, although I wish the circumstances for our meeting was very different. I'm Karen Remus, and I'm a 2003 Cedar fire survivor from San Diego, California. I'm sure a lot of you / most of you have pictures kind of like this. This is my husband and I standing on the debris of our home just a day or two after the fire swept through our suburban San Diego neighborhood. At that time, back in 2003, the Cedar fire was the most destructive wildfire in California state history, taking out about 2,300 homes. Obviously, since then, that number's been dwarfed by subsequent wildfire disasters, including, obviously, the Camp Fire. So unfortunately, it's kind of like a bad record that keeps playing over and over. So I know from firsthand experience how devastating this loss is, and I'm just very, very sorry for your loss. What are some strategies to try to just make it through on kind of this social emotional side? I mean, it's a long process. You know what I mean? I think when your house first goes down, you know, people are very, of course, people care, they're empathetic, they want to help. But as this process drags on, you know what I'm saying? Because we know it's not just like you don't recover after a week, a month, 6 months, 1 year. Going back to something that Maitreya just said, it truly is a marathon, not a sprint. It's trite, but it really is true. I would say first thing, try not to compare with other people. Frankly, no one is where they thought they would be a year ago. Do you know what I'm saying? So there might be some people who've come further along. There are probably some people also behind you. And just remember, people recover from this process and navigate this loss in very differing timelines. There's a lot of variables. You know, how responsive is your insurance company? You know, what is the what is the availability of building resources in your area? So again, just trying to say like, hey, no one is probably where they thought they were going to be. I know at the 1 year mark, I certainly was not where I thought I was going to be. I was hoping I was going to be back in my house, and I most certainly was not at that time. So that's first and foremost. Also, I'm going to encourage you as time goes on, and hopefully this is a strategy that you've already been utilizing, to really connect with your fellow fire survivors. Especially as this process goes on, I think in my own experience personally and what I've observed in other fire survivor communities, you know, you pass the 1 year mark, and then sometimes it might be people are like, oh, like, you're not rebuilt yet? Like, what's the holdup? And in all fairness to people who aren't navigating this themselves, I don't think I could have appreciated how hard this is, how, you know what I'm saying, how lengthy a process this is, how exhausting a process this is, unless I had, you know, undergone it myself. So in all fairness to people who might not really appreciate the severity and how long this takes, really cleaving on to your fellow fire survivors can be a really, really useful strategy. Do you know what I'm saying? Nobody's going to get it. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, all these different steps along the way in your recovery. Okay, you know, we settled our personal property claim, and then you see another fire survivor and you tell them, they're like, yes, way to go. Somebody who's not gone through this, it's hard for them to appreciate, you know what I'm saying, necessarily how significant these milestones are. Also, when you're encountering challenges and hurdles, do you know what I'm saying? Like, oh my gosh, you know, this is what's happening right now as my claim is being adjusted. It's a really tough hurdle. I'm having a difficult time navigating it, and I'm feeling worn down. I'm feeling exhausted. I'm kind of feeling beat down. Again, fellow fire survivors are going to be able to appreciate that in a way that I think it can be very difficult for others not navigating this process to do so. So again, really holding on, and opportunities like this, when you come together with other fire survivors and other opportunities, I would encourage you to take those to just kind of lean on each other and kind of gain strength from each other, encourage each other, all right? So again, really, really hold on to your fellow fire survivors. Now, next thing, definitely be kind to yourself. This is, again, it can be a very long, exhaustive process. I remember when I was about the 1 year mark, I just remember around that time just feeling really, really tired. Raise your hand if you're exhausted. And okay, yes. I remember by that time I was trying to encourage myself to, and frankly my husband was encouraging me just to try to resume some of my pre-fire life. And I remember going out to a mom's night out. My little son was 2 when our house burned down. So, you know, he belonged to a play group, and I hadn't really been interacting much with them because I was working and navigating this fire recovery. And so I finally went to a mom's night out because I was trying to, again, regain some normalcy. And I remember there was a little bit of a wait, and I just sat down like on the bench in the restaurant, and then I just laid down, and I fell asleep in a restaurant. I mean, that happened, you know, so it's just like, I don't know if stuff like that happens to you guys, but my point is just be kind to yourself. Be gentle to yourself. You know, again, this is a very exhausting process. Do you know what I mean? So again, I put add your own descriptor here because I thought it best not to cuss on videotape. So whatever descriptor you would like to add, fill in your own blank there. Mine was probably, like I said, a little too colorful, you know, of the last 13 months. And again, just try to be as gentle with yourself, as forgiving of yourself. You know, not every decision made is the best decision. I mean, we made it through our process. We made it through our recovery. And again, you know, this morning I woke up in my rebuilt house and I flew up here, right? And I remember when I was at about this time in my own recovery, I was just, again, very exhausted, very worn down. It's a long process while you're also trying to raise kids, go to your job, you know, maintain your relationships. Now you have this additional full-time job. And again, just really trying to be very kind and forgiving of yourself. And again, not every decision made is going to be the best decision. I can look back at our claim, and even though, again, we were able to resolve issues in the long run and rebuild our home, there are several decisions looking back. Hindsight's 2020. Maybe I would have made a different decision now. But one thing I definitely learned was you make your best decision that you can with the information that you have available in that moment, and you go forward. And then if it turns out maybe a better decision could have been made with information later acquired, okay, you did the best that you could, right? You did the best that you could with the information you had available. So you just be gentle and kind and forgiving to yourself, all right? So again, be very gentle with yourself during these times. You deserve it. For those in relationships, boy, oh boy, how many people here are married? All right. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but people process loss, this is what I found, just having lived this firsthand, in very different ways. My husband and I process this loss very differently. Here's a quick flashback example. So our house, burns down. We were able, luckily, to secure rental housing. And, so a short time later, we were moving into that. And I still remember the day we were moving into that. So again, this is a while back for you guys in your timeline, but you'll appreciate the sentiment. So the rental furniture place shows up. They're offloading our rental furniture because, of course, all of our furniture is gone. And I just remember, they started unloading and coming in. And I started looking at it, and I just started crying because it was just an immediate reminder, all my stuff is gone. And again, I'm not crying for the couch. It's just the personal, what I'm saying, those personal items. And it was such a stark reminder to me. I literally went upstairs in the rental house. I shut myself in a closet so I could, cry in private. And then my husband came looking for me, and he was just super happy. He's like, hey, he goes, the rental furniture's here. Isn't it great? And literally, I'm crying in a closet, and he looks like he won the lottery, So it's just people, and he was just like, yay, our rental furniture's here. This is awesome. People process loss in different ways, and in your relationships, people might not be processing the same way, and sometimes whether it's a decision on what amount to accept from the insurance company or what type of rebuild to have or whether to purchase a replacement house versus a rebuild, there's a gazillion decisions to be made along this process. There might not always be 100% agreement. And I would just urge you as best as you can, as something I saw. I mean, we navigated it. I'm happy to say that we're still married, yay. But I will say candidly, we saw several divorces in our neighborhood. And I think the stress, again, for people who have not undergone this type of trauma and experience, it's hard for people to really grasp the enormity of the stress this places on you. Again, there's 101 decisions. The to-do list every day is a mile long. Do you know what I'm saying? It's hard to sustain that for 13 months and going. So again, I would just urge you, if you're encountering any of these challenges, try not to, remember, don't let the fire destroy the most important thing. And I remember us saying that to each other when sometimes we would maybe having some disagreement over a big issue. Hey, we got to remember the fire's already taken enough from us. We can't let it take the most important thing from us. And it was just the totality of the stress. It's hard to live with this level of stress for this long without having some head-to-head periodically with significant others. But I'd again encourage you, just remember that. Don't let the fire take what's most important. I'd encourage anybody to consider seeking professional help if they need it. In my experience, this is not the time to tough it out if you're experiencing anxiety, depression, both. I'm going to be candid. I did end up going and seeking some medical support. I could not sleep. I would try to go to sleep, and I just could not stop thinking about every single thing that had to be done. I don't know if any of you are struggling with that or have struggled with that in the past. And it finally got to be I needed to actually sleep, because you do need to sleep to live. And I ended up going and getting some medical support for that, because you got to be able to function. You got to be able to go to work, take care of the kids. So I just encourage anybody, if you're struggling with, Again, anxiety, depression. Don't tough it out. Don't shy away from seeking professional assistance. It can make all the difference in the world. I did it myself, and I'm really, really glad I did. It did really help. And again, individual therapy and or even couples counseling. Because again, you know, being under this level of stress for this length of time can really take a toll on relationships. And again, you want to keep those as healthy as you can, given the circumstances. All right, so that's kind of some of the hard, true facts about navigating these types of losses. Now I'm going to go into a couple of slides on kind of in our community, the Cedar Fire Survivor community in San Diego, some of the strategies that kind of evolved over time. As we started to hit kind of like into our 1 year and post 1 year anniversary, you know, there comes a moment sometimes where you're just like, okay, I've just cried as much as I can possibly cry. Now we're just going to try to find some humor. And so for us, welcome to the dark side of Cedar Fire Survivor humor, from one survivor to another. These are our infamous Cedar Fire Tour t-shirts we had made. So again, Cedar Fire Tour, and those are the names of all the streets that burned down in our community. And again, for us, there came just this moment, we would have these community meetings of just our fire survivors, and we're just like, you know what, we are a community, and we're gonna embrace that. And it just, like I said, to us, we were like, okay, we're gonna go now to the dark side of humor. We've been through exhaustion, we've been through trauma, we've been through loss, and now we're just gonna go to the dark side and kind of cleave onto it. So we had these t-shirts made. We would wear them around our community, and you could tell people weren't quite sure what to make of them. Like, are we supposed to laugh or should we cry? And we're like, figure it out, you know, but it was kind of a way for us to kind of hold on together and kind of have some dark humor about our situation. Followed shortly by our next set of t-shirts. I've seen fire and I've seen rain. I prefer rain. Scripps Ranch. Yes, we definitely prefer rain. So as you can tell, we're big t-shirt fans there in San Diego, lol. But it's definitely one of those things that only another fire survivor will get. You know what I mean? So again, other strategies. I really, really encourage you, celebrate along the way. You guys are now at about 13 months, because you're over a year, 13 months-ish. There have been victories. There have been small victories, and there's been big victories, all right? How many of you have closed out your personal property claim? All right. Okay, I'm going to give you an example. Here we go. Yeah! That's how you do it. All right. How many people here have settled out the structural portion of their claim? Okay, we have a couple. Let's clap them out. All right. How many of you have made the decision whether you're going to rebuild or replace at a different location? How many of you have made that choice? Okay, we've got a handful. Let's clap those people out. We would literally do this at our community recovery meetings because we're like, okay, these are victories. Do you know what I'm saying? And we are going to celebrate these along the way. And for those who have had those victories, we applaud you, and it encourages the rest of us, like, okay, if they've attained that, you know, particular milestone, I'm going to be next, right? I can keep going. People are doing it. I'm going to make it. So again, celebrating along the way really is going to give you the emotional strength to keep on going, all right? So I encourage you, find those even small milestones. Okay, maybe I'm not done with my contents list, but I got paid out on 30% of it. All right, clap yourself out again. Do you know what I'm saying? Look for those victories along the way to celebrate. You really need it to keep going. Many fire families in the communities that I have worked as a volunteer with for United Policyholders have celebrated with groundbreaking parties when you come to that point. So, okay, if you're like, we finally reached that point, here we go. Have a little get-together. Celebrate with family and friends, all right? When people finally get to this stage of framing, doing these again, framing, or could they call them framing or stud parties, right? And you invite people over, and there's me with actually some people at one of these, and people start writing messages in on the framing. So I don't know if you guys have seen this or heard of this, but it's kind of nice to imbue, for those who are rebuilding, to kind of imbue your new home with those good wishes and that goodwill, right? Here's some of my favorites. That's got to be my favorite right there. A Celtic blessing. But again, just knowing that that's in the interior of that rebuilt house, it's a nice way to go. And it's also a great way to just celebrate that milestone. Like in my own rebuild, like again, you know, you just have those, you know, first the debris is cleared. All right, clear the debris, right? Then you finally choose a builder or make a decision to purchase a replacement home, whichever way you're going. Great, we finally made that decision. All right, okay. If you're rebuilding, okay, now maybe I've hired a contractor. I've chosen my builder. Great, that's another step. That's worthy of celebration. Do you know what I'm saying? All these steps in the process. So again, this is a wide variety of strategies. These have been my personal experiences of strategies that helped me along my own journey of recovery. And again, things I've seen other communities do as well. I certainly hope that they've been helpful to you. My thoughts are with you guys. Again, I'm so sorry for your loss. But for my own community of the 2003 Cedar fire survivors, we're with you guys, and we care. So if you want to talk to previous wildfire survivors, Team UP is our volunteer network and professional network. These are previous wildfire survivors like myself, Steve Price, who's going to be talking in just a second. We're always available to listen and to empathize. Again, to reach us, you just send an email to info@uphelp.org. It's been a pleasure speaking with you, and I look forward to talking to any of you afterwards. Well, now I'm going to introduce Steve Price. Steve Price is a 2012 Waldo Canyon fire survivor from Colorado, and I met him in 2013 when I was up volunteering at a meeting and speaking at a meeting just like this, and he was in the audience. So now he pays it forward by coming in as a volunteer, and he flew from Colorado to be here with us today.
Beautiful, thank you. Yeah, I don't know who put this lineup together, but it's like the linebacker following the cheerleader. It's like, wait a minute, she's more fun to see and listen to. You know, I remember distinctly when I met Karen for the first time, and you know what, she gave me some hope right then. I'm like, man, if she can do it, I can do it. And, you know, my personality is that I really am I'm a kind of a traditional guy, you know, in that I'm a action-oriented guy. And I don't know if any of you guys can relate to that, but a lot of us are. And so when we realized that our house had gone down, man, I'm working on other things, you know. I'm like, hey, I have 3 things I need to get done. I remember this vividly. I need to clean up my lot so it doesn't you know, my backyard doesn't become somebody else's backyard. Because very much like Paradise, we lived up on the side of the mountain, right? And so, you know, my neighbor was still standing. The guy above me had come down, and I thought, hey, I need to clean my lot up so my backyard doesn't become their backyard. And so that was numero uno for me. I need to find a place for my family to live. That's really critical. And the third thing is I thought I need to either figure out how to buy or build a new house. So I had it very clear in my mind. And from there, I go to what Karen was describing, the 1,000,000-point checklist. You know, how it starts over every day. It's like I have 1,000,000 things to do. I don't know how I can get through it. And I finally gave myself the grace to say, you know what? If I only get 3 things done today, at least I got those 3 things done. And it started really clicking with me where, wow, I can do this. And it was a challenge. But, you know, as Karen said, we all process this differently. So I want to tell you a little bit about my story. So I grew up in Northern California, so this is personal for me. Not only did we experience our own loss, which I'll tell you a little bit more about, but, you know, I'm familiar with this area, this neighborhood. And so when my family went through this, my daughter was 20 years old. My wife and I had been married for almost 30 years. And, you know, so I've been in Colorado for most of my adult life. I actually grew up out here, and right after college, I went to Colorado. I like to say I went on a 6-day vacation about 13,000 days ago. But, you know, that's kind of also part of my personality, you know, of how do I try to make things a little lighter. My wife is she's just got a huge heart, one of those beautiful people, and man, she supported me in so many great ways. But But I would joke like, well, you know, at least the view's better because the trees are shorter, you know, that kind of thing. And I'm not sure she thought that was very funny, but you know, we tried to get through it as best we could, and that's the message I guess I have for you guys, is trying to find that joy, particularly as you go through these holidays. It's a challenge. I've been there. I know exactly how it feels. So we have the benefit of, you know, husband, wife, and a 20-year-old daughter. If any of you have kids that are in that age range, I would encourage you to get a hold of me, and I'm happy to put my daughter in touch with them. So she said, hey, Dad, before you leave, will you please let people know if they have kids that are my age or that age range, to have them feel like they can give me a call. And she's you know, really got a great heart. I think the other thing I can tell you about the joy of our personal circumstance, and let me say this, I know everybody, I can't tell your story. You know, I know how it felt for me. I know how it feels even to this day, this minute. I know how it feels. And so, you know, we're all different. And I'm not up here because I have the gold standard on how to settle an insurance claim. You know, we did pretty well, and I'm happy to share that with you. I talked to some folks before the meeting, and happy to share good and bad. If you're having any difficulties, I mean, guys, I didn't set out like, oh, let's just see if we can burn the house down so I can become an insurance expert, right? But now I know how these policies work. I understand how to maximize these claims, and I'm happy to try to help you with those things as well. But for now, I want to stay on the idea of finding some joy in this process. Let me start by saying this. I know how difficult it was for us at the time, and I can also share with you that myself, my wife, and my daughter have all said many times, together and separately, that we would never wish this experience on our worst enemy, but we wouldn't turn back the clock if we could. That's a pretty powerful thing for your 20-year-old kid to tell you, you know? And so you're like, wow, why do you say that? Because what we figured out is what is important to us. It's what's important to us today, right? It's made life so much richer in so many ways. And so when you get through this process and eventually you put your stamp on it and say, okay, wow, I've got a new home or this or that, it is amazing. It is amazing to look back at how it's really, in our situation, it's strengthened our relationships. It's just made our love deeper, more meaningful, and we know what's really important to us today that we didn't have as much of back then. So here's a picture of our home, and I don't want to focus on this too much. You guys know what these look like. They all look pretty much the same, right? What I can tell you is that in my experience doing these, I haven't done nearly as many as Karen, but I've done a few, and I like to get the feel of, you know, what this is like. You know, I tend to walk the neighborhoods. You know, I tend to want to drive every street. I tend to want to get a sense of, hey, what's this community looking like? So last time I was out here, I did that in Santa Rosa. I went through every single neighborhood. I was in Ukiah. I grew up, went to high school there, so a lot of fires have occurred in Mendocino County as well. And so, you know, what you can see here is that you may not be able to make it out, but there's a couple houses back in the background. So in our neighborhood, that fire came right down the hill, and it burned fairly haphazardly in our neighborhood. And actually, we thought, gosh, we're in pretty good shape. We had stucco, we had concrete tile. I'd had the fire department out about 5 weeks before. Our mitigation was in excellent shape, right? So again, hey, the action item guy, right, I got this done. It's good. So there's a pretty good chance it's still there, and obviously it didn't make it, right? So when it went down, I knew early on, which is another part of the story I'll share with you, but what I want to tell you is this is looking at the area of our driveway where the house came down. It was 3 stories in the back and two in the front, and our master bedroom and our bathroom was up above the garage floor slab. And we lost some things that were really important to us right on that floor slab. And so that gets into a piece of my story, and I want to point out that I-beam. That's a 60-foot I-beam, which becomes an important part of my story in a few minutes. So shortly after the fire, we had an event on our calendar. My wife's like, we can't do that. I'm like, we're damn sure going to do that. So what happened was 3 weeks after the fire, we jumped on an airplane. We flew into Oakland and met 2 of our really close friends. Bill and Robin. Robin's a residential real estate person, and we went out sailing on the bay, and we did all these incredible things. And the next day, she said, get in the car. I want to show you something. So she took us on a tour of the Oakland Hills. And she said, I know how tough this can be because 10 years ago, this whole area went up in fire. And I remember that vividly. And so she said, look up there today. And these beautiful homes. And although the big trees weren't there were new trees. And she said, look, in 10 years, and even less than that, you're going to be surprised at how your neighborhoods change. And I get it. Hey, 13 months later, there's still a lot of destruction up there. And that's something that, that's why I like to get in and feel it. I've seen recent photos and those things. So I get it. Your fire is beyond imagine, and it's personal to me. I understand some of the scope of the loss, even though ours was much, much smaller. To give you an idea, that fire burned about 220 square miles. That's almost exactly the same size as the city of Colorado Springs. So it's like, wow, it's hardly imaginable to me. And I understand that is a very, very big challenge. But we kept this date. So we flew to Oakland, and then we spent the day touring the hills, and then we drove to Napa, and we spent a couple days in Napa. And what's really beautiful about that, and I mentioned I come from Northern California. What I didn't share, I'm a Chico State graduate. Right? So here we kept our date, right? So talk about being personal to me. I've been in your community 100 times, at least, right? I know it. I feel it. I can picture it in my mind as perfectly as I could when I was here before. So it's personal to me, guys. And I'm grateful. I love this place, and I love this community and this whole entire area. So I'm glad to be able to come back to you guys today and tell you a little bit about how we got through it and how we did it joyously. So making new memories, and I'm gonna refer to a couple of things here. I didn't want to put a lot of bullet points down because I think this expresses a pretty good example of what it can be like. So this is right after Christmas. So literally several months after our fire occurred, we just said, hey, you know what? We don't have all that stuff anymore. And some part of our loss involved a lot of heirloom quality, museum type quality Christmas ornaments. And so it was like, yeah, I kind of lamented on that for a while. And then I realized, hey, look, I need to make some new memories. So we booked a trip to Disneyland. And in that process, I wanted to share with you a couple things that we did that just didn't take much effort. So here's an example of those of you, many of you remember, when I was a kid, we'd go to Disneyland. You remember the ticket books you'd buy, right? And when I was a kid, it was like, hey, Mom, give me the e-tickets because those were all the best rides, right? So I made Christmas ticket books. Gave the idea to my family. Here's one for my daughter. So daddy-daughter date deals. Make a meal together. Wow. Build something together. Funny pictures together. A day of skiing. Round at paintball. I mean, little things like that. They didn't take a lot of money or time or, one leap out of the sky. One fancy dinner date. Guys, it wasn't something I opened in the box that gave me joy. It's the things that I've kept since 2012 that really give me joy today, right? Making these new memories. It's like, oh my God, I couldn't believe in looking back how that impacted me. And we did the same thing. We went to New Orleans. We went to Jazz Fest, if any of you know that. So we took a cable car ride. And we ate oysters. We went to Commander's Palace. We had a night on Bourbon Street together. By this time, she's 21. We ate beignets, right, at Cafe Du Monde. Wow. We had lunch at the Acme Oyster House. Holy mackerel. Making new memories. It was so impactful for us. So a really big deal. Helping others. So I can't begin to imagine your situation, but in my case, it was very much like Paradise. We'd gone through several years of drought. We had 100-degree temperatures for an extended period of time. Our humidity was at about 4%. They locked us out of our neighborhood for about 11 days. And on the 11th day, we were able to get into our property, and a buddy called me and said, I'm going to help you sift your house. I thought, okay. Look, I'm a pretty proud guy, and normally my ego's trying to kill me. And I said, I'll take all the help I can get. And so Charlie and I went out, started sifting a house, looking for these heirloom things that we wanted. And about 10 o'clock, a guy pulls up. Now, bear in mind, you know what this is like. The only thing that was driving around up there was fire, the utility department, the police department, the National Guard, the Red Cross. And all of a sudden, it pulls this red pickup truck. Somehow he got through. He walks up, and I'm the only guy up there that was cleaning up. It was absolutely silent except for what we were doing. People just hadn't been able to get in yet, or weren't processing, whatever it might be. He gets out of his truck and he says, hey, I want to introduce myself. My name's Byron Spinney. I have no idea why I remembered that. He said, look, I'm not here to tell or sell you anything. I'm here to help you if you want some help sifting your home. I thought, man, I'm not too proud to ask for help. So I said, yeah, that'd be great. So this is Saturday morning. He says, look, I can have a crew here on Monday morning. So what he did, he sold his business earlier and was helping out through another national organization and was helping organize church groups and those kinds of things. And I thought he was bringing a crew to us on Monday. On Sunday, the next day, up drives a convoy of cars, maybe 30 cars. I'm like, holy mackerel. 90 people get out from a local church. They're done in these white spacesuits, right? And then he's like, hey, just stand back, man. We got this. And so they taught them how to sift for this stuff. We told them exactly what we were looking for. 90 people. He finally said, hey, we kind of got a lot of people on your house. Maybe you should try to talk to some of your neighbors. I'm like, there's nobody around. And so they helped us sift this house. And I'll never forget when Byron said, what, do you have a plan? And I said, well, I do have a plan. I said, we got here about 6 o'clock this morning. And I said, I've got a tractor coming, and I'm going to lift that I-beam up and get it out of there so I can get to the stuff I'm really after. And he says, would you like some advice? I'm like, dude, I'll take anything you got. He said, I'd cancel that tractor. So I thought, what any red-blooded male would say. How the hell am I supposed to get that I-beam out of there? And he said, you know what, Steve, we're going to get 30 guys, and we're going to walk in there, we're going to pick it up and walk it out of there. And that's exactly what they did. It absolutely blew me away that you could get guys in there, pick that 60-foot I-beam up and walk it out of there so we could get to what we were trying to get to. So that was an amazing lesson for me, the idea of helping other people. And it really led me to, hey, we can do this, listening to Karen and others at UP, meeting people like Byron Spinney. I met him a year, maybe 14, 15 months later. And I saw him at another event. We had another major fire 1 year later. And he walked up. I said, hi, Byron. I'm Steve Price. You probably don't remember me. He's like, I absolutely do remember you. And so it's amazing. I met him a couple of times since then. And it's one of those kind of instant on things. It was really a beautiful, incredible thing. And I remember after the Black Forest fire happened in 2013, and I'd met Karen and the folks at UP, and they asked us to get involved and help out. So we did a series of about 11 different seminars over a period of time, just like these R2R events. My wife and I were kind of you were kind of emceeing the event, I suppose. And I remember, I don't know what got over me, but when I walked up on stage, I was the first guy to speak. I said, hey, I just want you to know we're all here for you, just like we start out. I know what it feels like. But I said, I want to remind you that everybody's watching. Your kids are watching you. Your wife's watching you. You're watching your spouse. Your neighbors are watching you. And I said, look, and here's what I said to them. Every situation in life is a new opportunity to demonstrate your character. And sometimes some people don't demonstrate very good character. Here's a time when you really got to buckle down. You got to dig deep and say, look, I'm going to do nothing but demonstrate good character in this situation. And if I need to, I'll go lock myself in the closet, right? But this is a great opportunity to say, hey, look, I can do this, and I can do it with joy. And I remember also, after that Black Forest fire, helping a family, and this fella came in, he had 5 kids. He said, I don't know what to do. I said, well, what do you do with your family? He said, well, we normally go to have ice cream on Saturday. I said, well, good. Let's get them in the car and let's go take them to ice cream. That's what we did. Little things like that. So whether it's treating yourself to ice cream or fresh baked bread or flowers, those kinds of things. My daughter shared with me a story that I'd forgotten. She said, my wife called her one day and said, hi, honey. She said, I just need to tell you about my day today. She said, I normally don't wear my Chanel perfume, but I decided it's a Tuesday and I should wear it today. And so she just did that. She finally took that and just said, hey, look, I'm just going to treat myself. And so there's 101 ways that you can do it. Many more than that if you think about it. A lot of inexpensive ways to just treat yourself well. And I have to tell you, it's kind of hard coming in after Karen. She hit everything. I mean, if I was doing it by myself, I'd have said the same thing. I'm not as well as she did, right? But there's nothing you can really add to that other than a few pictures and tell you a little bit about the joy of how we got through it. So those are little things that we did. So this is really the end of how I really saw God's presence in my life when this happened. So I told you about when our house came down. I ordered the tractor in to get that I-beam out. I met Byron Spinney, and he said, hey, we're going to get 30 guys, and we're going to walk it out. And so they finally cleared enough of that floor slab, and we happened to be at church, so this is like on the 12th day after the fire, and Byron's folks had come on that day before, and so part of that floor slab was off, and I had two really good friends. One of them stayed, and it was raining by then, so these 100-degree days followed by monsoons, and it was horrible. He stayed unbeknownst to me. And so Rick texted me while we were just leaving church that Sunday, and he said, hey, I need you to come up to the lot. And we were going to go. I was going to take my family to brunch, and he said, I need you to come up. So I pulled a little white lie to my wife. I say, hey, I need to run up the lot, and then we'll go to breakfast. So I pulled up to the lot, but I probably stopped 100 yards short. I'm not sure she thought, well, that's kind of weird. Why don't you pull up? But I didn't, and I ran up, and my buddy Rick was still there. He he said that the night before, just before it was getting dark, he started finding things that you'd find near my wife's medicine cabinet, right, near her sink. He found things like nail polish bottles. And so he came back the next morning, right at the break of day, and started looking. And what he found was the wedding ring that my wife had taken off just before the fire came down the hill. What a miracle that was. There were very few things left that were keepsake things to us. And I knew within 45 minutes after we were evacuated that she'd left her ring on the sink. And so that was part of my mission. I need to get back there as quick as I can to do that. And this dish holds a significant importance to me as well. I was president of a trade association, and a friend gave that to me. It says, ability takes you to the top, and character keeps you there. And Rick had found that dish completely intact. The fire had gone right over it because it burnished the finish on it. So in like a piece of china, right, it was dull. It didn't have that shiny look to it. And one of the porcelain feet, it's all a part of it, was about that much shorter. So you knew the fire had gone right through there. He'd found her ring and filled it with water, and he said to me, is that it? I'm like, I don't know. And about that time, my wife comes up, and she's like, oh, my God, that's my wedding ring. Couldn't believe it. Most unbelievable experience. It hit the front page of our paper. We took it into our jeweler. She polished it up, and it looked absolutely brand new. Unbelievable. And she said, hey, guess what? The structural integrity is terrible. We have to melt this thing down, but we used the gold, and the diamonds were intact. I think there was one small diamond we had to replace, but otherwise, the diamonds were intact. It was incredible. And we have that ring today. It is unbelievable to me that we could find that. What a beautiful example of hope. And I hope that for you guys, that you can find that kind of hope and joy in this process, and that someday, you'll look back and say, wow, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy, but I wouldn't turn back the clock either. What a beautiful experience. You guys have enriched my life so much tonight. I'm grateful to be here. Thank you so much. We're here to help you in any way we can.
Just to reiterate,
have an overcoming roadblocks to rebuilding workshop. More details will be available for that in the upcoming weeks, but we will definitely be here on January 25th from 10:30 to 2. Not sure exactly what all